Workers Credit Union Studios at Fitchburg Access Television. I'm Michael Delamonica, and we are here with the Leominster Ward 1 School Committee debate. Now, there are two candidates running for the Ward 1 Leominster School Committee seat, November 2nd of this year. I invited both candidates to participate in this debate. We have one candidate here, Natalie Stassen. Gregory Renchovsky was invited. He declined to participate. He specifically indicated to me that he does not intend to debate for the school committee seat. His words. I did give him a second opportunity recently, and he repeated that stance. But his invitation remained open. He's not here, but Ms. Stassen, the other candidate, is here. So the show must go on, and we will give Ms. Stassen the opportunity to outline to the voters why she believes she is the best candidate for Ward 1 Leominster School Committee. So, Ms. Stassen, welcome. If you could just take a minute or so, and for those voters watching this who do not know who you are, just take some time to introduce yourself and why you've chosen to run for school committee, because you are not an incumbent, you are a challenger.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Your husband is the incumbent school committee member for Ward 1.
Yes.
He is running for city council. You've chosen to run for school committee to take his place on the school committee. And so explain who you are, why you're running, and what made you decide to do this.
Well, thank you, Michael, for this opportunity. I really appreciate getting to be here and getting to the word out that you do have a choice this year. So I am Natalie Yeager-Stassen, and I am a mother, I am a teacher, I am a scientist, and for all of those reasons, I thought it was really important that we have someone who, like myself, represents the values of the community of Leominster. So really, as a mother and as a teacher, I really feel that juxtaposition of what do we need in our school committee to be doing, both to best serve the students and to best serve the city. And we know that that means that we all need to work together. And so that's why I really decided to run this year. My husband has been asked to run for city council, and I wasn't sure I was going to run. But when no one else really stepped up, and then we finally did have a challenger step up, and I decided that we represented different things and what we wanted for the city. Because what I really want for the city is for our school committee and city government to really work together and do what we can to make our city strong by educating our children and making people want to come to Leominster because they know their children are going to get the best education possible.
Thank you. So first question, because of the way the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has been structured since education reform, the role of a local school committee can oftentimes be limited in terms of actually direct authority and setting policy. However, our local school committee is still a valuable shaper of policy within a school district, even if sometimes indirectly. So name one policy that you believe the Leominster School Committee has successfully promoted this past term, and name one policy that you feel hasn't been promoted and needs to be.
One policy that I really think that the school committee has done a really good job with is advocating for the fact that the school buses should be paid for by the city and not come out of school funds. Because we really have had that problem where what is allotted to the schools gets divvied up so crazily. There's all these pots, and recently, the last couple years, the city has actually, they are now, the school buses and transportation are being covered by the city instead of by the schools.
And one policy that you'd think you would like to see the school committee address that maybe it hasn't?
I would still like to see us really advocate for, and I know the school committee has been doing this, but I want to continue to have the school committee address what funds do we need to run our schools the way we want them to run, and really making sure that the budget that we present to the city reflects the needs of the schools and not just a minimum of what we can get by with.
So when you make that point, one thing that immediately goes off in my head is this debate over whether net school spending, the amount set by the state in terms of the minimum that a school district needs to spend, is sufficient to run a school district.
No.
And your answer would be a no.
No, I do not believe it is. Leominster is not just in the bottom 10% of spending over net school spending, we are in the bottom 10.
In terms of, now you say bottom 10 in spending over, so could you break that down? What do you mean by that? Because there's lies, there's darned lies, and then there's statistics.
Yes.
So what do you mean specifically by?
So what I mean by that is there is a number that is set by the state that is net school spending. And Leominster has been able to meet that number. That is a required number. If we do not meet that number, we actually end up having to pay fines. So we managed to meet that number, barely meet that number by the city's contribution to school spending. But whereas other communities will do 5% over or 24% over, and there's even some that do more than that over that net school spending. They contribute more than they need to above and beyond that net school spending number. Leominster, we barely make it to, we usually is like 0.1% over net school spending, and that's consistent. So we are in the bottom 10 districts for the entire state for how much we spend above what we absolutely minimally have to.
When all is said and done, my recollection, and this is admittedly in my head, but when all is said and done and the final numbers are in, my recollection is that the range is somewhere between 1% and 3% over net school spending. Do I have that too high?
It's low. It's too high.
Okay.
It's too high.
So you're saying it's more closer to 0.1?
Yeah.
Okay.
And often usually in the past several years, the amount to get over gets appropriated to the schools end of May, beginning of June, when essentially the school year is over and then they're trying to rush to spend that money. It has to be spent during that fiscal year. And therefore, it is not a budget that is sustainable. So that's one of the things, that the amount of money that gets us over net school spending is always at the end. So it's not budgeted in at the beginning so that we can't plan for it. So it's all this piecemeal stuff that happens at the end.
So now, if your opponent were here, based on just things I've seen on social media or whatnot, he's not here to speak for himself, but if he were here, he might say something to the effect of, okay, you want more money to go towards school spending on a municipal level, where's that money going to come from?
Well, I did take a look, and we have been given a smaller percentage of the net revenue of Leominster as a whole. The schools have for the last 10 years. So it's gone down by 2%, which doesn't seem like a lot. But if we had the same amount of the total revenue of Leominster schools, we would be getting more than $3,000. I'm sorry, not $3,000, $3 million more per year. So that would mean that we'd have $3 million in our budget that I don't know where it went. So it got redistributed to other things that needed money in Leominster, and I'm not denying that they need money as well, but it got redistributed, and I'd like to see that percentage come back to the schools.
Okay, well, next question. Both Fitchburg and Leominster throughout the 2020 and 2021 school year were totally remote learning, except for a small period in which they were hybrid. There was no in-school learning. some municipalities were hybrid right from the start and stayed that way throughout the entire year, but both Leominster and Fitchburg were mostly remote learning with a little bit of hybrid. Do you agree with Leominster's choice in that regard? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
So I actually teach in the Ashburnham-Westminster district, and we were hybrid from October until April when everyone went full in person. But my son, who goes to one of the Leominster schools, was remote. And I know that for us, it was a challenge. How do we make sure that he's getting on when we're both working outside the home? And I get that this is a huge problem for every single family. And you have to find a way to deal with this. However, I really think it is important that we did stay home, because the numbers in Leominster and Fitchburg were so much higher than they were in the community where I work personally. The infection rate and the transmission rate were almost 10 times as high. We had like a 2 to 4% transmission rate in Ash West, and we were at 14 here. So I thought, with that much transmissibility in the community, I really wanted us to play it safe. And I know that it was a challenge for every single family. I am not denying that, but I think that it's really important, because the challenge of losing our children or losing family members to COVID is much worse.
So what you're saying is you understand Westminster's rationale for doing what they did, or Ashburnham Westminster,
Yes.
Oakmont, correct? So
Yes.
Both towns. But you also understand Leominster rationale, and Fitchburg's for that matter, for
Yes.
doing what they did. And basically different transmission rates.
Exactly.
City versus
Exactly.
town, and a variety of factors involved there.
Absolutely.
So where do you see, how do you see some ways in which because the Fitchburg debate that we had a little while ago, some of the candidates made it clear that they believe that there's been a lot of falling behind by students because of the remote hybrid model that was for most of 2020 and 2021. What are some ways in which you think that that educators, and being a teacher, you can speak to this?
Oh, yes.
What are some ways in which the educators can help the students catch up? And by the way, not just putting it on the educators, do you see it as a parental, a community working together to try to make this catch up? How do you see us getting through this in terms of catching up so that we can get back to where we were a couple of years ago?
So when you say, do I see it just on the educators, or do I see it on the families, or do I see it on the community? I would love if every single member of our community steps up and says, what can I do? And recognizes that our educational system, while being definitely one of the gold standards for the United States, Massachusetts, as we know, has the highest standards in the United States. With that being said, as a teacher, there are things, especially I teach biology, and there's an MCAS, so I'm teaching to standards all the time, and there's things that I want to teach that aren't in the standards. So I think there's things that the students can learn that aren't in the standards. So I would love for us to broaden our definition of what education is, to include what we learn about history and our own culture from those around us and from our community, and what it means to be a community. How do we support each other? And I think that part of civics, if we can teach how to be a strong community member, how do we use what we have learned in school to do evidence-based reasoning. As a scientist, I'm all about that evidence-based reasoning. But if we use it no matter what we're dealing with, whether we're dealing with a science question or we're dealing with politics, if we use evidence-based reasoning to make our decisions, we're going to be a stronger community, and we're going to be able to work together much more effectively.
So if you could wish for one thing next term, wave a magic wand, wish for one thing that this next year's school committee can address head on, what would that be?
I would really like to see the school committee acknowledge that students really have very, very different needs. I saw it with my students. I had some that thrived remote. They could have done the whole year remote without any problem whatsoever. I had other students who needed to be there every day, and it was really a problem that they couldn't be. And I'd love for the school committee to get involved with the administration at the downtown to help come up with ways to make some more pods and distinguish between what are the real needs of our community and of individual students.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question, this next question that I have is one that I didn't ask the Fitchburg candidates because I kind of didn't need to. And here's what it is. Unlike the Fitchburg School Committee, which in their recent history have gotten along relatively harmoniously with the mayor and city administration, the Leominster School Committee over the last decade or so has had kind of a different history in terms of dealing with the mayor, in terms of dealing with city administration, and at times with the superintendent, although that seems to have been improved with a new superintendent. How do you believe that you can contribute to a more harmonious working relationship with the mayor of Leominster or city administration? The mayor will remain on the school committee as a member, mayor no longer being the chair of the school committee, but still remains a member of the school committee. Do you see, and I guess I asked, how do you see yourself being a contributor to that, but do you see your role as being that, or do you kind of like it the way it is? Why don't you go ahead and answer?
I really would love to see the mayor, city council, and the school committee working together in a much more harmonious fashion than has been for a long time. One of the things that I hope will change is that we might have a new mayor, which would, I think, be helpful in kind of jump-starting the process, redefining what that relationship can be. It is very unfortunate that our mayor has his way of doing things, is my point of the way I see it. However, if he is reelected as mayor, I will work with him because that is my job as a school committee member. But I really do want to move forward together. And that's what I'm hoping, is that continue dialogue, continue not to focus on what has been done in the past, but focus on what we can accomplish together as a community. Because that's what I'd really like to see. I want our community to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that starts with the schools.
So one thing, well, we have a little bit of time left here. And this is when I spoke to you to invite you to the debate here, you said that you had gotten some questions regarding a particular topic from people that maybe were a little out in left field. But it is a headline I see more and more, sort of a buzzword that you see on social media, a trending term. So just to sort of educate the voters, this idea of critical race theory, we hear about this. It's sort of turned into a hashtag, into a buzzword, if you will, in terms of a headline, a talking point, whatever you want to call it. What does that mean to you? And do you think that it has a place in Leominster curriculum? Do you think it's irrelevant that we talk about it? Do you think that it's overblown? I just want to hear your perspective.
That's a wonderful question, because I think most people don't really know what they keep hearing that buzzword, and they keep hearing all the hype about critical race theory. And really what it is, from my research, is talking about the fact that the history of each individual is not the same, that there is racial history. And so we need to examine it. The idea of critical race theory was developed for college education courses. It was not developed for elementary, middle school, or high school courses. That's not the idea. But our state has mandated, not at the school committee level, but at the state level, that we are very cognizant when we pick our curriculum, that it includes multiple races, it includes multiple cultures, that we try to acknowledge that not everyone comes at things from the same place. So we're really trying very hard to be cognizant of all of that. And that is coming from the state. We have to look at our curriculum and make sure that all the pictures in the book are not just white men.
And the flip side, the argument against promoting things like that would be that we're dividing people, that we need to seek ways in which we can bring people together, whereas if we're drawing dividing lines, we're just further dividing people, we're further categorizing people. How would you respond to that?
I love that, because as I have become more and more aware of this, and I started thinking the way you did, in terms of what you just said, that it could be dividing. But I'm finding
it's not my personal opinion. Okay, I'm saying what the flip side is. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, I did not mean to ascribe an opinion to you, but I have heard that, and at first I thought, why are we doing this? If we're drawing so much attention to race and ethnicity and all those things, won't it be dividing? And I questioned that myself. But as I personally have learned more about these things, I have learned to appreciate them so much more and really enjoy learning about other cultures and acknowledging that I've come to where I am today from a very limited viewpoint. I have grown up in a very middle-class household for my entire life. But that is not everyone's experience. And so really having an understanding of where other people are coming from and helps me to be a better educator, because I can make connections. I can say, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know anything about that. Educate me. And so we have a lot more of a two-way conversation, and both of us really win from learning about the other's point of view.
Well, Natalie Stassen, again, thank you so much for doing this. And so what I would like to do is give you an opportunity, take 2 to 3 minutes, and address the voters of Leominster directly. Yes, we're at FATV, but this will be broadcast on Leominster television. Kevin, I paid our dues to Leominster television, so we're current now, just in case you're concerned. So we will be simulcasting this on, or we'll be also broadcasting this on Leominster television. So you can address the voters of Leominster, take 2 or 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you all for watching tonight. Hopefully you understand that I want to be on school committee because I really want Leominster to continue to grow and work together. And the best way I know how to do that is to work with our children, to educate them to the best of our ability, to make them as strong as they can possibly be, by knowing as much as they can about where they come from and what their opportunities are. I personally have been involved in a program referred to as Science Plus C. So I am including coding into my science curriculum. And I know there are teachers in Leominster who are doing that as well. So we're growing and moving forward. And I'd love you to vote for me because I want to move Leominster forward and work with both City Council and the mayor, whoever that may be, to make Leominster stronger together. Thank you very much.
All right, Natalie Stassen, thank you very much for taking part in this discussion, and I wish you the best of luck this election season. And the election is November 2nd. Residents of Ward 1 in Leominster, which is mostly North Leominster, you have two choices for your ward school committee seat. We have Gregory Renschofsky, we have Natalie Stassen, who has joined us today. So neither is an incumbent. Both are challengers running for the first time. So make your choice wisely, read up on the candidates, and we'll see you at the polls November 2nd. Thank you.